Welcome to the Social Recruiting Show. We have a slightly different show today because my usual co-host, Katrina Collier, is at a very exciting event that I know she'll tell us about next week. And we've got a couple of different people. We have Elena Valentine from Skill Scout, who has jumped in to co-host with me today. So thank you so much, Elena.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. And then we have a special guest today, Bob Stocklin from the National Veterinary Associates. Did I say that right, Bob? I think I got it.
Yes. Thank you for having me.
Yes. We have a big show all about video, which is my favorite thing I'm always talking about, Elena's favorite thing. So I'm excited to see how Bob is using it. But first, could you just tell us a little bit about what you're doing at your company, Bob, or maybe how you got into recruitment, whatever background you want to share?
Yeah, absolutely. So my title is fancy. It's Talent Attraction and Talent Experience Specialist, which essentially translates to recruitment marketing. I'm helping National Veterinary Associates build up their recruitment marketing function. And we'll talk a little bit about what that looks like. But I've been there for about a year now. I was previously a recruiting analyst at Toll Brothers, where I spent a few years there and really wanted to jump deeper into recruitment marketing. And that's how I wound up at NVA.
Oh, I like that transition from analyst to marketing, because I bet you can use all those data skills. That's awesome.
I'm still a data guy at heart.
Love it. I need you on my team. I might have to hire you after this. Yeah, so what do you do? Tell me about your team. It sounds really cool. It's a new role you mentioned, right?
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's the team is growing like crazy. I mean, the company's growing like crazy. So Molly, my boss, brought me in, and I was the new guy. And I think we had a team of 10 or 11 at that point, and I'm a year in, and I think our team's 19 or 20 now. We're growing. It's insane. So veterinarians are tough to recruit, and we recruit for hundreds and hundreds of hospitals across the U.S. and Canada. We actually do have some hospitals in New Zealand and Australia as well, but that's handled by a different group. We're actually a pet care company as well, so we're also involved in pet resorts and pet suites. So it's pretty fancy pet grooming and pet care places as well. And that they're actually involved in some of our content development and video projects as well. We won't talk about them as much today, but they're certainly involved in getting in that. And a similar setup, they have their own unique cultures and brands that we're trying to showcase as well.
So I think it would be helpful to really understand, Bob, because I think what's really unique about your situation is the position that the National Veterinary Associations, or NVA, has, and how they support several hundred hospitals that are very unique, right? Because these are very kind of decentralized in many ways. And so I'd love for you to just talk about the challenge when that you're tackling, not just of the, trying to attract veterinarians, which is a very challenging thing to do, but also if you can talk about the relationship that NVA has in all of these very unique hospitals that have their own brands, et cetera, because I think that's a unique challenge for you.
Sounds super
Absolutely, yeah, and I think that's really important to understand when we talk about what NVA is doing, within recruiting and how we support hospitals. So NVA was actually founded in 1996 by a veterinarian. He saw the opportunity. He saw a need for a different kind of company. It was becoming increasingly harder for people to buy into practices. It's becoming more complex. Student debt is obviously a huge burden, and not just this industry, but all of them, and that's making it harder. So he wanted to make sure that these practices with retiring veterinarians, their legacy was preserved. And how could he do that? So he started buying into practices then, and we've grown like crazy since then. But he really wanted to make sure that legacy was preserved, and these practices still dictated their own medical practices. So like you mentioned, I mean, NVA is built as a very decentralized organization where they stay themselves. They maintain their brand. NVA is not branded on the hospitals. They sit in the background, and we exist to support. We don't have a corporate office. We have a support center. We believe in servant leadership, and that actually then reflects throughout the rest of the organization. So recruiting, we support the hospitals. We do not recruit for NVA so much as we recruit for all of our individual hospitals. And that's in my role, what we do as well. And it's not necessarily, not that we're not trying to grow the brand of NVA and who NVA is, but we're first and foremost trying to help those individual hospitals with their talent attraction efforts and their employer branding efforts? How can we help them tell their story, talk about their own unique culture, and attract veterinarians there?
Yeah.
They must have been very different because they're such different locations. Imagine different types of animals, services. So how do you tackle 100 different brands or more?
I think it all gets back to having them tell their own stories. So it's impossible to create one specific template and say you're going to talk about X, Y, Z. It's about setting up a program that's scalable, because it's just asking the right questions and saying what makes your practice unique, what would make somebody want to come here, and then that starts the conversation, and it leads to them telling their own story, and allowing them to talk about what they do every day, what type of people work there, what type of people they want to work there, and allowing them to do it themselves. We're just helping guide them, helping them frame the story, tell the story, but they're the ones who have to tell it, because we don't really know that as well as they do. They're the only ones who can really tell that.
And so why was video an attractive solution to do that?
Right blog. I can see why. I can guess why, but I want to hear.
Yeah, I mean, I think that area isn't too much different than why video is attractive to a lot of different industries, which is you go on a job board, you go somewhere, and it's just basic text job description, and it's hard to really understand what it's like to work there when you're just reading a job description that's probably not very good, to be honest, either, which is another project we're working on. But that's not today's conversation. So today, so with video, we're allowing that veterinarian or hospital manager to take a look inside what the practice looks like, who works there, put a name to the face, and really differentiate. So now when you're going on these job boards or clicking back to our career center, you're not just reading the job description. You're saying, I can put a name to the face, who the managing veterinarian there is, who's working at the front desk there, what's it really like to work there. And we still need to get things out of the interview process, but at least we're engaging candidates in a new way, in a way they haven't been able to before. And the video program coming from the recruiting group is great, because now we're giving all of these hospitals access to this. We have this program set up. We can approach them and say, hey, look, when you have a requisition, when you have a job open, you want to tell your story, we can help you do that. And here's how.
Yeah, because that's a challenge, right, Elena, for so many people, is they love the idea of video, but they're like, where do I start? So you're give them the
and I think that's when we started this project. I mean, this project kicked off, several months ago, and we went very slow intentionally to start because we needed to figure out what this program even needed to look like. We couldn't just say, here's what you're going to do and go. I mean, that's what we did for the first few videos to pilot it and get a lot of good feedback. And we were able to get feedback from hospitals with really tech-savvy hospital managers and staff, which made it easy to understand what they would do. And then some not-so-tech-savvy hospital managers and staff, to where it was going to be harder for them to understand, the video component. And then, there's also other hurdles, which is, they expect people to come in with full camera crews, thinking it's this huge production when it's supposed to be very authentic by design. Use your smartphone. We have some mics for you, a couple pieces of equipment that can really help, but it's supposed to be authentic. Tell your story. They want to see you. They don't want to see some corporate video that's clearly well produced. And and don't get me wrong, Skill Scout does a great job on the production end, but it's supposed to be authentic.
So I'd actually love for you to dive into that, right? Because as we traditionally think about video, there's multiple paths here. And you could have easily have gone to say, we're going to do full scale media production. Help me understand how you were selecting the video path to go down, and how you ended up selecting, smartphone employee generated video is a way to do that instead.
Yeah, I think that, I was engaged in some video projects even before I came to NBA. And I was always a fan of user generated content, and even, previous experiences dealing with, recruiting social media. The most engagement you get is always through that user generated content, because it breeds authenticity and credibility, because it doesn't appear to be coming from some corporate overlord saying this is our brand, and believe that this is our brand. It's actually coming from the people who are doing it every day. And it also made sense for our structure as well. And I can't take full credit either. for it at NBA. This project was actually already happening when I came in, which was one of the nice things. I got to really, the National Veterinary, the Nashville Veterinary Specialists video was already completed, which was one of our early pilots. This was a project kicked off by the recruiting team already. And what I was able to do is come in. I already believed in this type of project, take it on, and really then build even more pilots and build the program to what it is today.
One thing I always compare that to is that if you look at commercials versus unboxing videos, you could see a commercial of an iPhone, you're going to DVR, fast forward it, and say, this is annoying, I don't believe any of it, versus an unboxing video where millions of people will watch one unboxing video of the same iPhone. Because one, from a user, it's real, and it's not super produced at all, and one's, tons of money, and one's getting hits and one's not.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think it also makes sense for, again, how we're structured with all of those hospitals being unique. It's going to be very labor intensive to attempt to bring in one group to go out to hundreds of hospitals. I mean, the end goal is to have every hospital that's a part of the NBA community have a video to be able to tell their story, and it speaks to, again, who we are as an organization. It is a community of hospitals. It's not one organization where this is NBA hospital equals this. It's hospitals that have different stories to tell, different cultures, and we can't tell that. It has to be them telling it, and this is a great program in order for that to happen.
So I'd be curious, before we even talk about just like successes and hurdles as you're thinking about adoption of all of this, can you just talk about an example of, okay, where do you start? So if you could perhaps give a case study, you can name the hospital or not name the hospital, and how you approached it. What was that like to onboard that hospital, and your role, NVA's role in kind of supporting that? Yeah,
I think whether it was right or not, I think early on what we did was essentially we were as hands off as we possibly can, and that's partly because that's how we tend to be as a company. We tend to be as hands off as we can, and then with every video we would do, we would gather that feedback because we were so hands off and say, where do you need support? What were you struggling with? And
interesting. So you already started with kind of just these more just higher level questions. It wasn't saying, all right, we're pushing video on you, this is why you should do it. It was a lot of these kind of framing the problem questions that would get them to come up for themselves.
Yeah, I think the one great thing about a lot of the hospitals with NVA is a lot of them are willing to try something new. So we didn't have to sell, and there's so many, we didn't have to sell everyone on why video was great. There was a lot of hospitals already out there that said, this sounds awesome. I would love to watch this if I were a candidate. So I would love to try this at our hospital. So we didn't have to sell that as much. We went right into doing it and then asking, where do you feel like you needed more support than we gave you? And that allowed us to really build that process out and that program to say, okay, we need help here. And I didn't really understand this at the end. And it was actually also because we were so hands-off with the hospitals, we were also sort of hands-off with Skill Scout as well to say, we didn't really connect anybody. And that's really what we got to, is we needed to be this connecting piece. So pre-production, let's talk about this video a little bit more, about how we want to frame the story. So we knew that in pre-production, we needed to become story framers. And at the end, we needed to do a better job of connecting Skill Scout with our hospitals to say, this is the film that's coming in, and this is really what I want to speak to. And these are the video clips that speak to that, so we can then put the video together in a more succinct fashion as well. So that's really how we found what we needed to do, which is we needed to become those connecting pieces to help this video kind of move along the process.
Did the questions you asked, did they depend on what their problem was, or were they the same questions per clinic?
Early on, I think it was just very high level questions, like I mentioned, and then it got deeper into I would say more specific questions like where did you have trouble with the uploading process, and it got more specific towards the end. But I think in terms of the questions, every hospital, and this not just for MD hospitals, a lot of hospitals are the same in terms of their setup. They have their exam rooms, they have this, that, and they have a similar setup. Some hospitals may be different; they have more, and then we'll make sure they highlight that and say what type of equipment, what type of area do you have that differentiates you that you wouldn't talk about, and they can immediately pick it out and say, oh, this is what differentiates us from the rest of the hospitals in our market. So we make sure we highlight that with B-roll, and then talk to that, and make sure then they inflict that, and then talk about that in the in the interviews that the veterinarians and the vet techs do. So it got to a point where we were starting very high level with our questions, and then as the pilots went on, we were able to get more detailed and more detailed and more detailed. And I think we wanted to do that because this program needs to be super flexible. We can't ask the same questions in every single hospital because they are different in terms of the people that are going to be in it, and how things are set up and the number of employees. And we have practices that have 2 or 3 doctors, and then there's practices that have more than 10 doctors. So you're talking about completely different setups.
So one of the questions that we get a lot, especially again when it comes to pilots and how we get successful adoption across multiple locations, how would you, so typically our thing has been, all right, you're going to choose those cheerleaders. And I'm sure your team knows there's these select groups or locations. Can you even talk just a little bit about when it came to the pilot phase? Because that's going to be the question a lot of people have is, how do we get started? Who do we select? Can you talk a little bit about that initial selection process or pilot process and how you formulated that? Because these would be the almost success stories for maybe those more hesitant hospitals.
Yeah, I think that's where you have to rely on your recruiting team. And that's certainly what we did. I mean, I think I'm set up and I'm looking at I have a very macro view type role where I'm seeing what we're doing for talent attraction for all of our hospitals, but our recruiters are focused on a division, and they have very specific hospitals. They know those hospitals in a much more intimate way than I do. So it's relying on them to say, this is the type of hospital we're looking for. Can you pick out one that we might want to try? And most of them, they can immediately snap their finger.
Yeah.
Yes, this hospital, great hospital manager, tech savvy, this, that, and the other, in order for, and they know that this would be a great pilot hospital. I can say it was a pretty high success rate in terms of the ones they picked, knowing it would be a good pilot within their division. We tried to do mostly, one pilot per division. I think we missed out on that a little bit, but we still wound up with 10 to 12 pilots across our divisions. And what I loved about it is, even though they were considered, in this one type, which was cheerleaders, they were all different. They were all different people working there, different types. So it still allowed us to say, all right, we got this type of question. We've never gotten that before. We've got this type of question and feedback. We never got that before. How do we consider it? And I think the idea of what our program was going to become went through about 5 or 6 iterations before we got to where we are now. And I'm sure it still will change as we roll out to 50, 60, 100 hospitals. That's kind of the point of it, is constant feedback to constantly change and improve what this program looks like.
And Elena, I think the same thing with employees. So if you're thinking about if you just have one company like I do, and you start video, with a couple of employees that that they're just going to be excited and into it. Then other employees, once we push the video out and it does well, and they're like, people are looking at this video, and it's looking good and it's getting clicks. Then you get more people like, well, maybe I could do that. And I think it's exactly the same with.
Or, I mean, it ends up being a fun competition. What we end up seeing all of the time is, location A did this. Well, location B now wants this. Or the same thing with departments. And and so we constantly are seeing the same thing of, all right, we can do better, or we can,
and why not
make this happen.
And that's certainly why we wanted to do pilots within divisions, because the NBA attempts to connect, their community as best they can across the country, but they tend to know, for obvious reasons, the hospitals within their own respective divisions better than others. So we can create one within a division and then be able to share that out to the other ones and say, hey, what XYZ hospital did. Take a look. Let us know what you think if you like it. And we have sparked some interest from other hospitals by doing that. So it's been successful, kind of like that, playing off the competitive nature of.
Yeah, why not?
I would actually love to. Let's dig into the challenges. I mean, I know we can talk all about just the great things about video and also how wonderful it has been. But if you think about honestly, like, what have been some of the key challenges here, or when you've gotten pushback, or maybe points in the process that weren't successful? What has that been, so that everyone here can maybe learn from those lessons?
Absolutely. I think it comes down to two things. One is price. So I don't think there's a price in the world that some people won't think is too much for a video.
Or any content.
Yeah, exactly. So I think, and it's always different, because you think they're willing to spend a lot more money in some areas, but then when they think about content, they kind of balk at any price. And that's been a challenge. So it's been about level setting there and saying, look, this is what videos could cost you in other places, and this is what the intent of the video. The video costs money for a reason. We have to produce it, but then it has an intended impact. So it's about level setting what videos could cost.
Yeah, and it can get insane. I got quoted $15,000 a minute once.
Yeah, I mean, and that is not close to
They didn't get your business, Audra.
They did not.
So I think it's about understanding that, because that's a space we know. So when we see a price, and we can understand what that looks like in comparison with the rest of the market, but hospitals may not, and divisions may not. So level setting there, it's helped. That's helped a bit, but that's going to constantly be a challenge. I don't think that's going to end, because we've put out a couple communications that level set price, and the other one is the authentic user generated side.
Yes,
I think we've talked about why we like user generated content, but that doesn't. Everybody likes it. They want that really well produced, corporate looking video, because it looks nice. I mean, I think we can all agree that those videos look great. And then they think, well, that's what I want for my hospital. I don't want this
person on a phone. Yeah.
Video, and that's been something. And I think that's where we've shared kind of not even our successes yet, because it's too early, but successes of what user generated content has done. And then I think it's just having them take a step back and say, almost like what you mentioned about the iPhone unwrapping, what videos are you watching, and what videos are engaging you?
Is it commercials? No.
Yeah. It's those videos on Facebook or Twitter or Instagram that you see that are from somebody else's phone. Like those are the ones that are going viral and blowing up on the internet. And when they realize that and say, and we are actually putting like a production piece on it too, so it's not just going to be your shaky hand, video. It's gonna look nice, and when that's a hurdle that still exists, but unlike price, when they actually then see the final product, they can say, okay, I get it, I like it. It's actually came out really nice, and even despite it being user generated, I really like the look and feel, because the success that has turned into is, wow, this video really feels like us. It really captures what we are, and that's really, we know we've done a good job.
And here's what's really interesting. What I know that you all have started to do, because it's interesting when it comes to, okay, we're going to create a recruitment video. There's a lot of gawking at the price, but when you say, okay, we're going to create a marketing video generally for the hospital.
Yeah, they're
already like, oh yeah, like, we get it. And I know that you all have actually started to learn from that and say, hey, you know what? Actually, this can serve both dual purposes. And you've, started to offer, well, now, we can take from that footage and actually make it into something that can be marketing. And you've gotten some uptick from that.
Absolutely. And that came from like a need that was only observed through this program, which was visiting their hospital website and looking on it and seeing a hospital tour. And it would be a couple photos, or it'd say photos coming soon, realizing, we have the video of the entire hospital now. We can do something with this. And then, so it's then creating that additional video walkthrough. And I still remember the email I got the first time that, we created one of those and said, hey, and it was a feedback mechanism. What would you think about this program if we added this on? I mean, it was, I couldn't see them, but it was the email with their eyes lighting up saying, wow, this is amazing. This is huge. I want to put this up on my website immediately. So, I mean, because we're capturing video of their entire, clinic or hospital. We can help them in other ways too. And that's why I think that's one of the successes and one of the pros of going slow at first. It's capturing an idea like that. That came from Abby, to say, hey,
my better half.
Yeah, we've done this with our clients. Why don't we think about doing this? And when she said it to me, I said, this is absolutely something we should think about doing. And we've done it with a couple others now, and it's now a part of the program offering. And it's really, we're getting questions about that piece specifically and saying, what do you mean by this? And making sure they understand. And when they actually know, yeah, this means you can put a marketing video up on your website along with the recruiting video. It's, it really helps. And that's, you're talking about now driving visits to hospitals, which is another thing they're looking to do.
And we see that as being only a trend that's going to increase. So for the first time, we've had HR come to us to say marketing is getting jellies over what we're doing. Marketing wants to do this too. So we're seeing so much of HR just being like, haha, we've done this first before marketing, and marketing starting to very quickly come in. So the kind of the key lessons from there, and I think there's a whole lesson to be learned about how HR, when you're doing this, just to become best friends with your marketing. And what does that mean? Because literally I've heard out of marketing's mouths, HR is the one that typically goes rogue. That's why it's so hard to work with them. But, I know one of the questions that a lot of people have around video, especially because you're bringing in the branding and all of that, is what is the relationship that you have with marketing? What is the relationship that you have with legal to make these videos something that, we see that as roadblocks? So how are you tackling that?
I think marketing is very much in the same position as recruiting now, where they are growing. NVA, as we talked about earlier, comes from a place of existing to support, and the growth has been big enough now where there's been a realization that a lot of those key departments need to grow. So marketing is growing a lot too. So they're very supportive. I mean, they have been supportive of everything that we want to do. And I think where we tend to overlap and try to link is making sure we're staying true to the mission of NVA, and that messaging is consistent of NVA is a community, our hospitals are unique and they're individual, and NVA exists to support. I mean, that is our message, and it's truly lived out by our leadership and by everyone who works for NVA. So if we stay consistent with that and stay on that's our on brand, that's where we tend to work with them, and from there we're handling our own projects, and we're certainly sharing with them, hey, this is what we're working on, and I know what they're working on, and we try to pick pieces of content from each other, say, hey, that would be useful to share out. I think when we get to sharing, we'll have to work together even more when it comes to, hey, now we're going to start sharing more about who NVA is. I think that's when we'll dive even deeper with them. But until then, it's we're staying consistent with that brand message, and we've been very supportive of each other, and they've specifically been very supportive of the work that we've been doing.
Hey, Lena, the one thing I always hear that's very common with different companies is when you go to marketing and you say, well, let's share content, and you put some of mine, and that one thing I always hear is it's a different audience. So how do you tackle that? I mean, it definitely depends on industry, but how do you tackle that when you get that pushback? No, we have a different audience. We don't want your content.
Yeah, I think that's a good question. I think there probably is some content that isn't for us, and there's probably some content we're producing that's not for them. I think it's when you get to who is NVA, what does NVA do, and why do we do it? That's when you have content that gets to those questions. I think that's that's a branding thing that works for employer branding, that works for marketing, because that's whether you're looking to we're looking to have another hospital join our community, or we're trying to attract veterinarians and have them understand who NVA is. It's just important for them to understand the brand. So I think we're making sure that when one side or the other is producing content like that, we know to share with each other. Other than that, so we have, I guess you could say, some sort of ground rules about what we would want to share with each other, and to know what type of because that type of content is specific to both of our audiences, and almost that Venn diagram, right, of what's combined, what's theirs, and what's ours.
Yeah. That makes sense.
My response to that is that companies who are doing this well are the ones that are courageous. I think the biggest challenges that companies have in combining the two of these is, well, how authentic do we really want to be? How behind the scenes do we really want to be? Because it's all the difference between, yes, the unboxing video and kind of take a look behind like the curtain, and the most interesting man in the world, Dos Equis, this is like just a high-powered brand. What we're finding is that the trend is people inevitably buy from people. People are buying experiences. And so we are seeing that there are more and more people stories that are becoming popular, even when it comes to selling that marketing brand. We see this all the time. I mean, Southwest Airlines does such an excellent job of doing this, where a lot of their content is this kind of behind the scenes with their employees of, hey, we've partnered with Build-A-Bear, and, they just have these fun visuals of bears now all in the seats, and the pilots and the airline attendants, how all of them are getting involved. And it serves as both, right? So there are absolutely some brands who are just doing that in a big way, but it does take a lot of courage from leadership of, this is part of our brand. Our brand is our people. And what we have found is that the more those stories can converge between marketing and HR, the more budgets people have, the more willing people are to experiment with the kind of stories that they're going to tell. Patagonia does this amazingly, right? A lot of these, the REIs of the world, the Yetis, all they're doing is highlighting their customers and sharing these stories. And I only see that as being something that will continue. That's what people want now, because our generation is becoming much more wary of the corporate ads, because we've seen how ugly the behind the scenes can look, because all of it, there's multiple perspectives now that we're hearing from the news. So the more that companies are just upfront with what some of those realities are, it's building also the customer base of that brand.
Yeah, I think also just bombarded with social media now, with commercials just everywhere. So it's just like we're had enough. I feel like to some point. What were you going to say, Bob?
I think, to Elena's point, the key to transparency is not just finding, on the talent attraction side, it's finding the right fit too. I think when you're not transparent, it may attract some people that won't wind up being a fit for your culture. And I think when we apply that to what we're doing, I mean, because you think about at the hospital level, if you have a 3-doctor practice and you add 1 doctor, that could transform the culture of that practice. And so it's about finding somebody who's going to fit in. That doesn't mean, it has to, be, sometimes culture fit is confused for somebody who's exactly the same, but it could be certainly somebody bringing, and diversifying what that culture is, but somebody who's going to be a positive impact there. So being transparent about who you are and what you do and what you're looking for, I think is important to finding not just, a hire, but the right hire that will stay long term. And now you're talking about, a much more valuable hire in many ways.
And especially for service business. So, I mean, NVA and these hospitals are perfect examples, is that these are, oftentimes smaller hospitals where the service, where the culture, where that, who you bring your pets to, right? I'm bringing my pup Yofi to this hospital because I love that doctor, right? I'm not in love with that brand. That brand means nothing to me. It's that I know who that manager is when I come in the door, And I inherently trust that doctor, and that's the doctor who I'm going to go to. So this is a people business, regardless if it's on the marketing side or the recruitment side.
And I think our veterinarians are certainly making their decision, their job decisions based on people. You know, the doctors that are at their practice, the technicians that are supporting them. How many are there? What are they like? Those are still the decisions that are driving their decision to go to another practice, to stay at their current one, or the one that's at NVA. And I think that's yet another reason why I think video is so important and can be impactful, is because we're getting away from this text job description that's describing what the hospital's like, and we're showing the veterinarians and the support staff that are working there and having them speak to what they like about working there. What's been great. So you're already getting to the heart of what they're looking for right away.
Yep. And I think video, like you kind of said, is even better, I think, than text, than getting people to opt out, because you can say in your job description, we have a fast-paced environment. So does everyone. I don't really believe it. But if you show this video of people going crazy, running around, and you're like someone that likes to just chill, and it's not for you, you've seen it, and you can really take it in. Where everyone writes stuff like that on their job description, but it doesn't really mean it, I think. But if you show it.
And I think one of the key drivers for a lot of companies, or that we often have to have big conversations around, is that this isn't about sunshine and rainbows. So let's not push forth with that, because this shouldn't just be about getting candidates to say yes. Right. Having a candidate say no and to say, I'm not going to waste my time, like self-screening in or self-screening out, I think is a measure that people should be looking at, that it isn't about necessarily the quantity, it's the quality of people who are coming in, knowing that this is exactly what it's about. This should equally about how are we solving turnover, how are we really addressing things that are often very difficult to understand, so that a candidate can say, you know what, that isn't for me.
Which is good.
And that's okay.
That's why I hate number of applicants as a measure. I think it's the worst measure, because they could all be stinky, right?
Number of quality applicants. And to your point, Audra, I'm waiting for the job description where I say we have a really, really slow-paced environment.
Right.
I've never seen that yet. It's always fast-paced. I'm waiting for the one that says, we're very relaxed. We do as little work as possible.
Yeah, but there are some environments like that. Not many, but I want to hear a bit about how you push them out, because as a recruitment marketing person myself, and I have videos. There's just so many places you can put them, and I guess it depends on personas and where your audience is. But where do you start with, like, all right, you've got this great video. Yeah. Where do you even start with what to do with it?
I have a very experimental mindset. So once we have that video, I want it to go everywhere to see where is it going to work with this audience best. So we obviously we have it populated on our job descriptions when they're made. We're sharing them out. Via LinkedIn, email marketing, but we're also asking our recruiters to say, hey, what do you think about, like, taking these videos and sharing them in your sourcing message? Because we're still a team that, because of that environment I described earlier with how few there are, how low unemployment is, sourcing is just, that's a huge part of what we do. And good sourcing still makes a huge impact. So what about using these videos and sharing these videos out in your message to say, not some messages may not have them and some messages do. What type of conversion rates are you getting, and email acceptance, email open rates, and response with video versus without video. So we're really trying to put it in all of our channels, any channel that can accept it, and say ones that do have video, what type of conversion rates are we seeing versus ones that aren't. And I think, again, to our earlier discussion, it's not just about conversion rates, but that quality as well. That I certainly look to see what's that overall audience size in terms of number of applicants, but the real measure, like you said, is what type of quality are we getting? Ones that are then moving to the next stage and the second stage of the interview process. Right. That's a real measure of how those videos are going to do, and any type of content, how it's going to help and assist.
Mm-hmm. I would surmise, especially when it comes to veterinarians, and you're looking for very experienced ones who, again, may not necessarily be looking for that next role, if you will. What we have found to be best isn't necessarily that we're blasting it off, and running ads and, hoping that it comes across in their feed. That these are more personalized messages that we're sending to them in an email as a source or recruiter, and to say, here's a video either, about myself or about our hospital, based on what, this environment looks like, would love your feedback on that. And just the click to open rates of videos, kind of where you see the kind of that visual tab, the thumbnail.
I was going to ask
in
about
the
that.
email.
That's, you just do a screenshot. That's not usually, and like a fake
it's
plus
like,
button,
yeah.
a fake play button. It works great. I fall for it.
Yeah, it's like a 16x open rate for that. So we're pushing a lot more, even like the more we can make these personalized, the more that these are one-on-one, especially if I'm looking at the NVA roles of veterinarians. It's about relationship.
Yeah, and Juan's actually mentioning Lemlist. Have you guys heard of that? It's good for. It sounds like it's good for emailing videos. I gotta check it out. I've heard.
Yeah, there's a couple of other ones. I've heard of Lemlist. Vidyard is another
Loom
one.
It's pretty good. I've heard for actually playing in the videos.
Is another one. There's a couple of other just like email software programs like Mixmax, for example. They'll have video tabs where you can see the thumbnail, so that they're not just looking at kind of some long YouTube link text, but it pops into a visual.
But if not, it's so simple.
Is another
just take a screenshot, like you said, and put it in Gmail. Screenshot it and a little text, and then they can click through. But if you can have a tool, even better.
Yeah. But that's the most simplest, right? So if we see this a lot. So if you're working in government or some of these very protected emails, and you can't necessarily, purchase these softwares, or it doesn't stick, absolutely being able to send a screenshot and then writing, click on this, etc. That's a very easy hack, a free hack that most email servers and companies, won't tell you on.
One other hack for video I always say is, I see a lot of people that will share a YouTube video to their Facebook page, and then it goes down the feed and it's gone forever. So I always say, take the video, upload it to YouTube, then upload it natively to Facebook. And I guess you can't do that with LinkedIn or LinkedIn page, but always upload it natively where you can, because it's going to be on that videos tab and it's going to kind of stick to the top versus just being shared and disappear.
Yep.
So I like that you get your recruiters. Do you also get those doctors in their office to kind of share it out, or like on LinkedIn or where?
Yeah, that's just a part of NVA. I mean, I think it's still their business, and that's still the way it's looked at. It's their hospital, so they're certainly still doing their own local recruiting. So it's not just for our recruiting team. It's for them to use as well. It's for them. We're recruiting other pieces of content too outside of video that are trying to embody the same message of creating pieces of content that show who you are, and they have access to all of that content that we're creating, so that they can use it and recruit for their own hospital as well.
I want to hear a little bit just about these cute bulldogs, because I've been really excited to.
Yeah, I think the story I can share is, I've always been a dog person, but then the first time I went on a hospital visit, I think I was so shocked, because I'm used to just seeing dogs playful, this, that, and the other. I walked in the back of a hospital, and I saw a dog in the middle of surgery, and I jumped back and said, "Whoa, this is not what I'm used to seeing dogs in." But I mean, then I think it gets to what makes veterinary so special, is that they're not just dealing, with our pets and our loved animals, when they're playful, is that they help make sure they're healthy to do that. They're fixing them in that way. They're helping treat them, and that's really what I took away from that first one. And then it allows us all to see those cute baby bulldogs healthy, happy, for a lot longer. I think that's a veterinarian has a very unique and special job.
Yeah.
One question I have one more for at least myself, Bob. One of the things that because Abby and I are very geeky design researchers,
Love thinking.
was that just in the in the process of doing this, what we see so much, again, you being a recruiter, is how does this just affect your perspective of these roles? The fact that now, you're on the ground floor now, just in the process of doing video, you're seeing things, you're researching things about these roles that, and any surprises there, any things that, you came into this thinking that these are what the roles you were recruiting for, but as a result of now seeing it for yourself, having to go through this process.
Yeah, I think
any insights there?
Projects like this, it allows me to maintain empathy. I think I work from home. Our team is all across the country, and so when I sit at home on this computer, doing my various projects, if I were to just do that. And we were to have projects like this, I think it'd be very easy to sit back and not really understand. And video projects like this, visiting sites, I think it makes the role real, what they go through every day. And when I talk about site visits, I did a hot video. I got to see what they do, every day. A veterinarian getting up in the middle of our interview because one of their patients was upset. And I think I understand how hard, and I just obviously touched on how special their job is, how important. I think that's what I get out of it, and that's what kind of drives me to try to help these hospitals hire, is because when they hire an additional person, they can continue to serve even more animals in that area, and so I think it makes me empathize with how special their role is, how hard it can be, to deal with some of the things that they have to deal with. Like I mentioned, it's not just the happy times; it's the sad times as well. And that's kind of what drives me to really move these projects forward and help these hospitals.
Another good example, Elena, was when I first joined Tenable. We have this awesome offsite hackathon where we invite all our R&D people in together to do this whole event, and it's 3 days. And that first day, it was actually in Orlando at Disney World, and I got to go, which was awesome anyway. But in doing the video, I didn't actually take the video, but helping to organize it, I spent 3 days with all of our R&D people, which is so I'll never forget that. Just not even getting to know them, but also what they care about, what they're like, and then who's who. So then next time, also I work remotely, so next time I need help with a project, I'm like, hey, so and so, remember we hung out at this event? And, I know them now. So like you said, it really helped me understand the people.
Yeah.
So what else should we touch about? What did we miss, Elena? Oh, we can talk about some of your other clients and videos they're doing. I know you did some really cool ones with big airline wheels. What was that one?
Yeah. So there's, several, to Bob's point, there's typically a couple of there's about 3 to 4 main reasons why companies are coming to us for videos. One is this is just a hard to fill role. So this idea that we can just start to differentiate ourselves, give people a new way to understand it is one. The other is that this is an evergreen role, right? So we're hiring for several vet techs. So it just makes sense for us to put some resources behind this. The other one is what job could use a reality check. So this is where the airline reels, for example, come into play. So American Airlines was struggling with fleet service and baggage handlers because I don't think anyone really knows and really understands that airports don't shut down. So this is a rain, sleet, shine, snow kind of position. And so again, this is, we've seen obviously that the most successful videos are the ones that are actually asking the question of why do people quit?
I like that.
Addressing the challenges.
They were getting the wrong types of applicants, I'm guessing.
They're getting the wrong type of applicants. And I'm not saying that that's necessarily going to work for everyone. I'm not saying that that's how NVA hospitals are going to come into this to say, why do veterinarians quit here? But when you actually can think in that kind of extreme, you can start to reflect on what makes this a very difficult environment.
And who would like
folks.
that? Because there are going to be people that excel.
Exactly. And who would like that? So that's a lot of, the things that we're seeing, and are, praising a lot of companies who are promoting that, because again, authenticity is key.
Yeah.
And so candidates are going to kind of see either fake stock photos or a very inauthentic environment from a mile away. And so credit, so much of what Bob and NVA are doing. And I guess my last question for you, Bob, would be, what, if we're talking to the folks here, how does it make sense to get started, right? What would you say are kind of the key pieces for someone to take away from your story, based on all of the learnings you've had of like, here's how you can get started tomorrow. And I think the last question is, what's next? So you've done the pilots. There are now several hospitals on board. What does that next milestone look like for you all?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. I think one main takeaways would be, I think everybody has to figure out their own process for, what are these videos going to mean? How are we going to share them? And I don't really have necessarily a ton of feedback there. But what I would say is, I would want to touch again on authenticity is key. I think we can't say that enough times in this. And I think with that being said, it's getting back to telling a good story. Figure out your questions for storytelling. What do you want to ask? Whether it's about a specific employee or about a department, about your entire.
That's key. That's so important.
What are going to be the questions that are going to help unlock the right story, that are going to get the conversation rolling? I think when it becomes a conversation about what for me it's the practice in the hospital, for somebody else it might be a department or a company. When it becomes a conversation about like, this is who we are, that's when you really get the right information. And that's what we're trying to do with content development in general, is tell a story, but get to the right information that tells a story. Because some people automatically assume it's like when you're upfront and people and you say, tell me 3 things about yourself, you can't think of anything. When you ask somebody, tell me, what makes your practice unique, even though they know, it's hard for them to necessarily think right away. But if you break it down into questions and use it as icebreakers, you get to the right information. Getting to that right information is central to what makes a good video.
Can I jump in there and interrupt, Bob? Because I made a mistake with this once. I asked 2 generic of questions. Like, we have a set of questions, and they're like, why do you love this tenable? Why do you? And they seem like good, legit questions. But when you ask someone, why do you love your company? They're just like, oh, well, I like the people. It's really great. You get these generic answers. So that was a mistake I made. It's about, you say the people are great. Tell me how they're great. Give me a story about one person that's great. That was key for me to learn, because I made a big mistake in that one video. That's
a technique, Audra, actually. It's tell me about. Describe a moment when.
Yes.
Most of those questions, like there's the generic, but your culture manifests not in the value itself, but in the stories of how that value manifests.
Yep.
So every question should be diving deeper into, don't talk to me about, tell me about the importance of humility in this organization. It's like, tell me a moment when you saw humility in the workplace.
Yep.
Right? Tell me about. That's a huge hack.
Yes.
For, driving those stories. And quite frankly, it's very telling if an employee cannot share an example, either you got your values wrong, or y'all need to have some morale session to talk about what's happening. We've actually had now 2 companies that have postponed video, because as they were going through this, they realized there was some trust and some major morale issues.
Amazing.
And they had to stop production and say, we're not ready for this. There's some major change management that we have to figure out to do this.
And that's actually a really pretty brave decision, I think, to do that. Because I think there would be a lot of people who would say, we're just going to do it and we'll create some canned answers. And the video would be fine, but it wouldn't actually be as impactful as other videos can be. And Audra, I think, we made those mistakes early on too. The questions could be too generic, and that's where we are now. And getting to the other part of the question is where we go from here is, that's why we're getting more involved in pre-production to ask those questions with Skill Scout on the phone, with me on the phone, with the hospital on the phone but we can all align, ask the right questions, and everybody can feel good about where the story's heading going into that hospital doing the filming. And there was some that happened to us early on too. So I think that was part of our learnings and going slow and figuring it out. And I think a lot of those videos as we went on got better at doing that. And so, to Elena, to answer your last part of your question, which is where we head from here, I think we're still in the situation where we're going to have our early adopters and we're going to have our later adopters. So we're focused early on is diving in who are those early adopters? Who can we get to champion this program as we roll out? We have our pilot videos who we can use as resources to champion the program. CDM product, and now we go and we push and promote. I now have somebody else who's helping me with this project to handle more of the day-to-day, which allows.
Yeah, I know your capacity was an issue too, right? Because you're trying to port so many hospitals.
I always wind up doing a million things at once. It just kind of has to be how. So somebody's in here to support me now on my team. She's doing a tremendous job. She's just way more organized than me. Like I am a high-level guy, and I can help with the strategy. But if you ask me to go through every little detail, I'm going to be fired.
I'm like you too. I understand that. But I think Elena's the more the detailed one, which is why you're probably good partners.
Yeah.
Oh, Abby.
No, Abby.
Bob, this is why you're working with Abby and not me.
There you go.
So having Trisha on my team to help me out and help organize how the videos flow through the processes allows me to focus on promotion of the program. Whether it's speaking to division leaders, speaking to individual hospitals, getting involved in pre-production strategy calls. Now we have the capacity to actually grow this program the way it needs to. So we're excited to start ramping up, and I am going to be in the ears of a lot of people within NVA and at the local hospital level over the next several months. I don't care if the holidays are coming up; they gotta get this going.
Love it. No sleep. We actually are out of time already. It flew by, you guys. Thank you. I'm going to let you kind of pitch your stuff. But first, I just want to say next week, because I'm actually not going to be here. It's Thanksgiving in the States, and I'm going to be good and spend some time with my family. But we have quite a few viewers, and Katrina's in the UK, so they're going to continue. So she'll be back. And let's see, we have Tris Revel as the guest. And the guest co-host is going to be Jan Tez. And I think a lot of people know him. He's a sourcing god, if I'm correct. A great show. But Skill Scout, what's the website? How can people reach out to you, Elena?
www.skillscout.com. Just a quick heads up, we are having a DIY video end of year sale.
I saw that. I got the email today.
And this is an option, right? May or may not be a fit, and we recognize that this has to work for the company, but we are all about positioning HR to be chief human storytellers of their business. That's really important to us. And Bob and NVA are just perfect examples of what success could really look like as this is pushing forward to adoption.
Awesome. And Bob, how can we reach you? LinkedIn best or Twitter? Where do you hang out?
LinkedIn and Twitter's at Bob Stocklin. You're going to see tweets, just there's some work, and then there's a lot of Philadelphia sports. Huge fan for
you're being authentic, right?
So just be ready for that. I definitely have gone on some Eagles tirades this season, and I've lost a couple of followers.
That's funny.
So, just be ready.
But hey, that's the same as video. People can opt in or opt out, and that's Absolutely. Good for you. It's fine.
It's authentic, like you said.
Yes. Awesome. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you for having me.
And have a great holiday week, everyone, next week.
Yeah, you too.
Take care. Help to get over the snow over there, Bob. I'll try and dig out too. Thanks, everyone.
See ya. Happy Friday.
Bye.
Bye.